Hello there, love and greetings to you. I'm Paul Friedman, founder of the Marriage Foundation. If you're visiting this channel for the first time, then a special greeting to you, warm welcome, and be aware that you have finally found the one channel that really where we understand marriage. And it's not from a psychological perspective. I used to be a divorce mediator, but it's a very practical, scientific, and yes, spiritual perspective, because love is spiritual, isn't it? And so here's where you get the real deal. Also, we have been helping couples primarily by helping individuals with our courses find a happy marriage even though they're at the end of their marriage. I got into this because I was a divorce mediator and a couple asked me to help them save their marriage instead. And I discovered things that really changed my life, and they have changed the lives of thousands now. So this topic is 5 mistakes men make in marriage. Just so you know, all of us make mistakes in marriage, but mostly all of us make mistakes in marriage because we have been completely miseducated about marriage. When we get married, we don't even know why we get married. I mean, the common response is we get married because we fell in love. Sure, but why get married at all? And so we're going to identify 5 mistakes that men make. You make them. Don't feel guilty about it. It's no big deal. But as you become educated in marriage, you will make less and less mistakes. And you should know, a marriage that is working according to its design, because it does have a design, everything in the universe has a mechanical component, it produces joy and love. That's what marriage is supposed to do. And so when you know what you're doing, that's the outcome. When you don't know what you're doing, then marriage for most people is very frustrating. Over half the people who get married get a divorce, so it's not working. Here's where this is a good time. You can subscribe or wait for a couple so you see that I do know what I'm talking about. So we're going to start with number 1. The biggest mistake is anger. We have come in our world to where we don't understand anger. We certainly don't know how it impacts those of us around us and ourselves. So I'm going to start with how it's impacting your wife. And don't tell me you're not an angry person, because it is part and parcel to a part of us, namely the biological body and the mind, to get angry when we, and again, it's the mind, feels threatened in any way, shape, or form, or like something's not right. It's almost a default reaction. Anger is not us. It is an external thing. It is something that we take in and take on, and we're supposed to be able to use anger in order to shut everything down so we could be focused on defeating our adversary. Your wife is not your adversary. Your wife is your soulmate. So when we get married, you're supposed to utilize anger to defend your wife, to protect her. But because no one has taught you, so it's not your fault, I emphasize that point, you have used anger against her. You have been threatening with your tone. You may have yelled at her. You may have shouted at her. You may have threatened her. God knows what is possible. We see everything from A to Z. And that is like pretend your wife hired or pretend you hired a bodyguard and one day he's walking down the street with you and he pulls out his gun and says, you know, I could kill you with this. And that is what you are. You are your wife's bodyguard. And when you're using anger towards her, that's what you're saying to her. Look what I could do to you. Completely, I hate the word inappropriate, but it's 180 degrees from how you're supposed to be using anger and how it's never supposed to use you, by the way. You're supposed to eliminate it entirely and not allow it in. But it's become a habit. Now, another more refined way of looking at this is when you understand the psyche of a woman. She's the protectee, you're the protector. Seeing that gun is a very frightening thing. It's off-putting. So what you're doing is where you want her close to you, you want to make love to her, you want to be hand in hand together, walking through life, connected at the level of the heart, and here you're putting her off, even if you display that anger towards someone else in front of her. You're not supposed to. Great example of someone who understands this are in the Godfather movies, where the Godfather never displayed anger in front of his wife. Just don't do it. It's a big, big mistake. It's the biggest mistake. Number 2, and this is going to take some explaining, and by now you can subscribe, right? Because you're seeing, whoa, this stuff is different. Now, when I say this stuff is different, I'm not taking credit for coming up with this stuff. I've merely discovered it. I'm just sharing it with you. So number 2 is thinking of their wife as a business partner. Now, I don't mean that you run a household together, because in that regard, she is to some degree a business partner, but that's a mundane aspect of your lives together. Your life together is meant to be lived in love and happiness. You are meant to have a consciousness of happiness and love, and that's where you share your lives in your marriage. The two of you live your lives primarily in that state of mind. The business stuff takes care of itself. It's not that big a deal. It's not that hard to take care of the bills, to figure out who's doing that and who's taking out the trash. But this is the big thing, is it's a distraction. Another aspect of this is seeing your wife as she owes you and you owe her. That you have a relationship that is based on a pari passu. I take care of this, you take care of that, and that's how we get along. Again, it is not how you get along. You get along on this level up here where you merge yourselves as souls, not on this level down here where she gives you this, you give her that. And this even comes into some men who expect sex. Now, your wife should understand that giving you sex is part of her expression of love and loyalty, but most women are not trained to do that. In fact, they're taught with the women's liberation movement that sex is a commodity item and you don't get it unless you deserve it as a husband. Now, what do you do if that's where your wife is at? Well, you can't confront her with that because it's over both of your heads, frankly. But what you can do is you can change your framework of your marriage from your perspective. You have to learn how. And it will change the dynamic of your marriage where she wants to please you. Right now, she doesn't. And She will, because she'll be able to open up her heart when you're running your marriage correctly, which you're not doing now. Number 3, applying unrealistic expectations upon her. Now, this has many facets. I think the biggest facet of this is understanding that women do not think the way men think. They don't see situations the way men see situations. They don't analyze. I almost said the way men do. I'm going to say they barely, and again, this is not 100%, you know? These generalities are mostly true, but not 100%, but women don't analyze. Even strategically, and women are more strategic than men mostly, but they don't lay it out. They are not horizontal and vertical lines and triangles and cubes. I often said if you could look inside the mind of a woman, it would be like looking at a pot of boiling spaghetti, because they live in a different realm in their minds than men do. So when we have expectations of them understanding something in the simplest way, you might say, and you're frustrated because she didn't get it, it's on you. Because you've put your expectations of her ahead of the reality of who she is and how she functions as a woman. And this is the demise of many a good marriage. Number 4, making communications about objectives. Men communicate because they want to accomplish something. They want to talk about this because we need this solution, we need this plan, we need this. Those are objectives. Women don't do that. Women talk because it's how they relate. And the speech, as long as it's positive and uplifting, will accomplish 1,000,000,000 times more than if you're clear and concise. And a great example that I had in my personal life, many pre-marriage years ago, I had a girlfriend who planted a tree too close to her house, and it was going to ruin her foundation as it grew up. And she was so proud of planting it and said, "What do you think?" And I knew what the problem will be in 10 years. And I said, "Well, I think you're beautiful." And she went, "Oh," and didn't worry about the tree. Who cares? Who cares? When you're married, you care about connecting. And your communication ought to be all about love, all about connecting, regardless of any practical thing. And I don't say that lightly. We think as men that this is important and that is important. And they may be, but they're not nearly as important as connecting here when you're married. And these important objectives can be reached without laying them out. They can go more slowly. And it's a good lesson for us men to back down a little bit, relax, and there's an expression, give it to God, and it'll work out. Most things work out, and when they don't, you fix them. But it's a big mistake to make your communication with your wife about objectives. Sure, there's things that have to be talked about, but not much. Just not much. And certainly not with any weight. Number 5, This is a big mistake these days. They didn't have this mistake 50 years ago. And that is imagining women are like the women portrayed in porn. And I'm not going to restrict this to just porn. I'm going to say movies, sitcoms, which frankly border on porn, and in the 50s would have been considered porn. And women aren't like that. The woman you married is not like that. She is pure. In your mind, you should feel, I married a virgin who waited for me until we found each other, and now we are living a heavenly marriage. By having your marriage in that context, you're eliminating so many problems. But more than that, you're changing the defining dynamic of your marriage into one of love, simplicity, innocence, harmony, because porn women are whores and not the kind of woman you want your daughter to turn into, and not the kind of woman you want your wife to be. And I know there's some people who say, well, you want her to be a lady when you're with her in public and a prostitute when you're with her in private. And that is incorrect. You want to have a deep, loving connection and let the sex be used to enhance that, because that love that you can have when you're having sex with your wife is so much deeper than almost anything else, but you have to learn how to do that. It doesn't come naturally because of all the mistraining we have. So hopefully these will help you. That's why we're here. The Marriage Foundation is a nonprofit, and so we have a lot of free things like these videos. Definitely subscribe. And we also have a lot of inexpensive offerings like our books. And then we have courses, course for men if your marriage is in serious trouble. So go to our website. There's even an Ask a Counselor section. It's free. You can ask a counselor. If you are a counselor, whether you're clergy or a therapist, you could learn our ways and use that in your practice. We have a inexpensive course where we teach you how to be a marriage counselor the right way. So take advantage of us, make the best use of us. Leave a like, leave a positive comment if you wish, and I hope to see you again. Thank you, and God bless you, and take care.